in the Capitol building, near the minority leader's office, hangs on the wall a large red box with a glass case. It says, "In case of emergency, break glass." And inside is not the fire alarm that some Democrats have tried to pull to stop from voting. No, it is a file folder with various different Epstein-related materials that the Democrats can haul out and distribute to the press whenever they find themselves on the wrong side of history. Once again, the Democrats are releasing never-before-seen Epstein information because they failed to shut down the government and get the trillions of dollars they wanted for illegal aliens. Hashtag fail. Hashtag massive fail. What's up? This is Mark K. Saves the Republic. Thanks so much for being here. Subscribe right now. Set the notification bell. Make sure that whenever we go live, whenever we deposit, I just said deposit, whenever I deposit new content in the slot, you want to make sure that you're on the receiving end. Basically, what I was trying to say is, whenever we go live or we publish new content, you want to make sure that you're getting it immediately. I mean, I was just talking to a buddy of mine because we do, there's a lot of different content creators out there. A lot of people create different kinds of content. I create political content. I create other kinds of content. Some would say humorous. Some would say not at all humorous. I have a buddy who lives in Nashville. He's a what do you call it? Economic or investment creator and content creator, which apparently there's a lot more money in. But basically what happens is, we were chit-chatting about this whole thing, and it happens that, whenever there's news that breaks, you need to get it first, because with news, being first is the most important. Financial information and advice, you can get it. You can kind of, learn that as you go along. That's kind of evergreen material. But when Epstein files are released, or shutdowns are over, or there's votes for this or votes for that kind of information you need immediately. And the best way to get it is to subscribe to this channel and make sure you set those notifications. That way, you can tell YouTube or Rumble or Facebook or X or Spotify or iTunes, I want Mark K. Saves the Republic immediately, as soon as it's ready. Don't wait. Don't hesitate. Just give it to me. Give it to me good. That's exactly what we want you. That's exactly what we want you to do. All right, so there's a lot going on today. First of all, the government's going to reopen, which is very exciting news. Mike Johnson has called the House back into order, and President Donald Trump says, yeah, look, if nothing else goes wrong, then hopefully we're going to open up the government today. In fact, he was on the Pat McAfee show. This is the most amazing. Donald Trump on the Pat McAfee show is just one of the most interesting things I've ever heard in my entire life. But Donald Trump was on the Pat McAfee show, and he said, yeah, look, if nothing else goes wrong, we're going to reopen the government.
House is going to vote, and I think they're going to vote positively. I think most people want to see it open. Only people that hate our country want to see it not open, because our country is doing so well, so we don't want to waste these times. These are precious times. We have $17 trillion plus being invested on our country. That's many times more than any country has ever had.
Yeah, Donald Trump saying, look, we don't want to waste all this time. We got money coming in. We got more deals to make. We've got great, we got to make America great again. And tick tock on the clock. I've only got 3 more years. Literally 3 more years from January is how much time President Donald Trump and his administration have to enact all of their legislative, I guess you would say, ideals or mandates or desires. All of the things that they were elected to do, they've only got 3 years to do them. And what happens is new stuff pops up all the time. Like you're out there working on clearing out the border and getting rid of all the illegals and fixing the economy and bringing down gas prices and drilling. You're middle of all that. And then all of a sudden, there's a war, and you got to call India and Pakistan and be like, guys, you're ruining my mojo. Stop it right now. And they go, yes, sir, no problem. And then, you got Gavin Newsom out in California acting the fool. You got redistricting. There's all this stuff that pops up that you have to deal with. The Supreme Court, lawsuits. It's crazy. It's crazy, I tell you. A lesser man would just go nuts, but not Donald Trump. He's able to handle it all. And now, because of the shutdown coming to an end, because the Democrats failed miserably, and man, they failed miserably. They failed so miserably. It's wild how badly they failed. In fact, I was on Newsmax this morning, And everybody loves when I quote myself on Newsmax. So let me just share with you what happened on Newsmax this morning as I play back a clip of me discussing the shutdown.
Putting the government, a disaster. Okay. So, of course, rank-and-file Democrats continue to point the finger of blame at Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, who faces a fury of calls to step down. Politico with this, how Chuck Schumer plans to weather the storm. Quote, progressives are dreaming of a 2028 primary challenge.
All right, so let's bring in our panel. Mark Kaye, host of Mark Kaye Saves the Republic, and Dustin Olson, pollster at American Pulse Research. Great to see you both this morning. So let's start with Democrats who are now trying to justify their shutdown standoff and the prolonged suffering of millions of Americans. Mark, the biggest issue here, as Senator Joni Ernst put it yesterday on our show, Democrats were fine with using the American people as leverage, and that is not a winning strategy. Your thoughts?
Yeah, well, we have a motto here on Mark Kaye Saves the Republic. If the Democrats are happy, you shouldn't be. So it's a great day for America because they're all really, really annoyed. But the strategy that they used was exactly right. They leveraged Americans' pain. They leveraged American suffering. They said, we don't have control of the House of Representatives, the Senate, the White House, or even really the Supreme Court. All we have is control of shutting down the government. And I think what happened was you had moderate blue state or red state or purple state Democrats who finally realized this is bad politically. John Fetterman, who was on The View yesterday, literally said, I don't want to get lectured by Bernie Sanders or Gavin Newsom because they live in deep blue districts and they can be as progressive as they want. In Pennsylvania, which he said was one of the states that actually matters when it comes to the big decision, meaning president, we have Democrats and Republicans, and he has to be the senator for both of them. So I think what you're going to see is you're going to see the rise of the moderate Democrat, or at least I hope you're going to see the rise of the moderate Democrat, and maybe a little less of this extremism. Yeah, that was a great clip. If I do say so. Wow, I was listening back going, I actually sound like I know what I'm talking about, don't I? It's amazing when you throw me up on Newsmax and you put me in between two professional broadcasters. I really seem like I know a thing or two about stuff. But it's true, and I have to play you that thing yesterday, the John Fetterman clip yesterday from The View. I got to tell you, I don't feel bad for making fun of John Fetterman because, let's be honest, there was a lot to make fun of him for. I don't feel bad for ragging on John Fetterman as long as I did because, let's be honest, he deserved to be ragged on. But now John Fetterman has proven to be something that I never thought he was going to be. I thought his entire political career was going to be political puppet for the Democrat Party. I mean, literally, the guy looks and acts like a puppet. He was in the ICU with a stroke on primary day. He won his primary from an ICU bed. He beat Dr. Oz, and he never really fully recovered, still has not fully recovered. Yet now, as his Senate reign continues, he seems to be getting more and more clear-headed. He seems to more and more understand what being in the Senate is all about. And what we thought was going to be a disastrous puppet that the Democrats were going to use for their own evil deeds is now evolving into this monster that they can't control. This monster who has common sense and dignity and actually knows that he's not just the senator for the Democrats in Pennsylvania, but he's the senator for all Pennsylvanians. In fact, let me just play you this because Sunny Hostin, who, as far as I know, has never had a stroke, although there's something mentally wrong with her. She thought she was gonna stick it to John Fetterman. She had John Fetterman on The View yesterday, and she thought she was gonna make him look like an idiot. But man, did he turn the tables on her?
Well, Senator Bernie Sanders said the vote was a horrific mistake. Governor Gavin Newsom called it pathetic and a surrender. Poll after poll found more Americans on both sides of the aisle blaming Republicans. Even Marjorie Taylor Greene blamed the GOP. As you mentioned, Democrats had big wins last week, so you had momentum. Why give in now? Why bring a butter knife to a gunfight? Are you willing to gamble that the GOP will negotiate on health care in good faith once the government reopens? Because if that gamble is wrong, 500,000 Pennsylvanians that you represent, their health care costs will skyrocket if you are wrong. And I believe you are wrong.
By the way, before we get to John Fetterman's response, what, butter knife to a gun? I thought it was just a knife to a gunfight. Is it butter knife to a gunfight? Is that like where, I don't know. I always just thought it was, why'd you bring a knife to a gunfight? But I guess butter knife even worse. Anyway, I digress. Here is John Fetterman putting Sunny Hostin right in her place.
Well, first of all, MTG is quite literally the last person in America that I'm going to take advice or to get their kinds of my leadership and values from. And now if Democrats are celebrating crazy pants like that, then that's on them. And now I don't need a lecture. I don't need a lecture from whether it's Bernie or the governor in California, because they are representing very deep blue kinds of populations, and a lot of those things were part of the extreme. And now remember, what really needs to win, the big win, is involving my state and other states and those things. And why have we arrived here after the election a year ago? We got to forget some of the things that cost us that election. Or now for me, it's like, that's why I'm trying to remind people that kinds of the extremism, we can't return to those kind of things and realize we need to find a way forward. And I would like to, rather than cite MTG, I'm going to cite one of the new governor-elects saying that my election is not a green light to continue the shutdown, because I promise you, this isn't a political game. It is viewed by many of us, but the reality is 42 million Americans now not sure where their next meal is going to come from, and because we vote like that, or people that haven't been paid for 5 weeks now, and that kinds of chaos. Those workers have to borrow more than $500 million, from their credit union just to pay their bills.
Yeah, so that's John Fetterman, and look, I mean, they just, the points that he makes are just amazingly clear and it really right on the money. What he's saying is, hey, look, we have to make sure that, first of all, as Democrats, we're not quoting MTG, because that's something we probably don't want to do. Also, as Democrats, we want to make sure that we are not, looking at the blue states as the purveyors of the final wisdom. For example, what he's trying to say is that he's not going to listen to Bernie Sanders. Why? Because Bernie Sanders is from Vermont, which is deep blue, crazy blue. They're the crazy. I mean, it's like the craziest. It's the craziest place in the world. He's not going to listen to Gavin Newsom from California. Why? Because California is deep blue, and he is from Pennsylvania. And Pennsylvania, I'm going to be honest with you, Pennsylvania is a state that has both Republicans and Democrats, and as he so eloquently pointed out, is a state that was necessary to win the White House, and the Democrats flubbed it. It is one of the most important states when it comes to the Electoral College, and the Democrats abandoned it. They discarded it. They did not service Pennsylvania voters. They did not appeal to Pennsylvania voters. They did not have an agenda that Pennsylvania voters wanted. So why on earth would he care what the majority of the Democrat caucus cares about? When you look at when you go through the list, Nevada, for example. In fact, I'm going to pull this list back up again because it's very important. It's very important that you understand exactly who's voting for the government to reopen. Catherine Cortez Masto. She's from Nevada. Nevada is, of course, a swing state. Why is this? I don't have an account. Can you just, never mind. You know what? Hold on. Let me go back here. Here we go. Let me go to AP instead. All right. So here we go. Let's go through the list together one more time, because John Fetterman is right on the money. Smartest Democrat there is the guy with a stroke. Here's what you got. You've got Catherine Cortez, you got Jeanine Shaheen from New Hampshire. New Hampshire, first of all, she's retiring, so I think she's like, I'm not going to go out like this. Also, New Hampshire is a more and more purplish state. It used to be red, it used to be blue, it used to be red, it used to be blue, it's kind of purple now. I truly believe that New Hampshire could go red, and I think Jeanine Shaheen knows that. Dick Durbin from Illinois. This guy's been raked over the coals because of Chicago, and I think he too has just had enough of it, and he's like, I'm out. Tim Kaine from Virginia. Virginia is a state that can go either way. It didn't in this last election, but man, when you look at the presidency, when you look at the presidential elections, Virginia is a player. Maggie Hassan of New Hampshire as well. Angus King is an independent from Maine. He doesn't vote He caucuses with the Democrats, but he doesn't have to be a Democrat at 24/7. Jackie Rosen from Nevada, and of course, Catherine Cortez Masto from Nevada, and John Fetterman from Pennsylvania. Nevada, Pennsylvania, two swing states that the Democrats lost that they thought they might have a chance of winning. But first of all, Kamala Harris was their candidate, and she was running against President Donald Trump, who is one of the most popular presidents in our lifetime. So that's where this all ends up. That's how this all played out. And that's why John Fetterman is on The View saying, look at what's happening. The Democrats on The View are citing Marjorie Taylor Greene as someone that they want to listen to, and they're trying to ridicule one of their own, a senator from a swing state that they lost, instead of doing what he's saying and saying, look, maybe we shouldn't be so extreme because it's costing us voters. 12 hours after this is just, it's unbelievable and also totally believable to me. 12 hours after the shutdown ended, the Democrats broke the glass outside of Chuck Schumer's office and got Epstein emails that they could release so as to try to throw off the scent from their hashtag shutdown fail.
Breaking news, the House Oversight Committee has just released new emails from convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Some are focused on President Trump. Jay O'Brien has the details. Good morning, Jay.
Yeah, George, good morning. These are records that the department, or rather the House Oversight Committee, subpoenaed from the Epstein estate. Reams, thousands of pages worth, released this morning by Democrats on that panel, several mentioning President Trump by name.
This morning, the bombshell release of what House Democrats say are emails to and from deceased convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, several referring to President Donald Trump by name. In an April 2011 email released by Democrats on the House Oversight Committee, lawmakers say Epstein wrote to his now convicted accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell, 3 years after pleading guilty to sex crimes involving a minor, telling her, "I want you to realize that that dog that hasn't barked is Trump." Unnamed victim spent hours at my house with him. He has never once been mentioned. According to the released emails, Maxwell responds, "I have been thinking about that." But this summer, in a recorded interview with the Department of Justice, Maxwell told Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, the president's former lawyer, she never witnessed Trump act inappropriately.
I never witnessed the president in any inappropriate setting in any way. The president was never inappropriate with anybody. In the times that I was with him, he was a gentleman in all respects.
Shortly after that interview, Maxwell was moved to a minimum security prison camp, prompting criticism. She received special treatment.
Yeah, special treatment for telling the truth.
Breaking news, the House Oversight Committee.
Oh, sorry, George, we have had enough of George Snuffleupagus. Hold on, let me make sure that doesn't happen.
Breaking news, the House Oversight.
Let me make sure that doesn't happen again. So here are the emails that were let me just show you the emails here that were released. This is the first one, and it's tough to see. Let me see if I can zoom in on it. I can't really. But basically, here's what it says. It's here. I can do it this way. I think maybe because I can't even read it the way it is. All right, here it is. And now keep in mind, ABC very deceptively reported that there were emails to and from Jeffrey Epstein that mentioned Donald Trump. And that sounds like the emails were back and forth with President Donald Trump, but they were not. Here's what he wrote. He said, "I want you to realize that that dog that hasn't barked is Trump. Victim," which they redacted in the email before they released it, "spent hours at my house with him. He has never once been mentioned." Now, the redaction here speaks volumes. What they didn't say in this email is actually the most important thing, because the victim we know is what's her name? Virginia Jeffrey, who tragically took her own life. The reason they redacted her name in the email is because she already exonerated President Donald Trump when she gave her testimony. "Jeffrey told me that Donald Trump is a good friend of his," she said. "But you never observed them together?" "No, not that I can actually remember, not off the top of my head." "When did Donald Trump flirt with you?" was the question. "He didn't. That's what's inaccurate." "Did you ever see Donald Trump at Jeffrey's?" "Not that I can remember." "On his island?" "No, not that I can remember." "In New Mexico?" "No, not that I can remember." "In New York?" "No, not that I can remember." "All right. Enough of you. We're done with you. You're not giving us anything we need." And for whatever reason, they took her name. But Virginia Jeffrey is the victim they're talking about. "Spent hours at my house with him. He has never once been mentioned. Police chief, etc. I'm 75% there." To which Ghislaine Maxwell wrote, "I have been thinking about that. Now, no official word from the White House, but I believe the press secretary, CNN had a report from the press secretary, who, by the way, we're waiting for. There's going to be a press briefing here in just a minute. We'll bring it to you live. There's going to be a press briefing with White House press secretary Caroline Leavitt. I imagine she's getting briefed on these last minute Epstein things. But here's what she said earlier today about the disclosure of these emails by the Democrats in a last ditch effort to make America forget how big a bunch of losers they are.
Trump did not receive or send any of the messages. They largely predate his time as president, and he has not been accused of any criminal wrongdoing in connection with Epstein or Maxwell. The White House is now responding and saying that, and I'm quoting now from the White House, the Democrats selectively leaked emails to the liberal media to create a fake narrative to smear President Trump, end quote.
This reminds me a lot of the naked lady. You remember the naked lady birthday card thing that they said Donald Trump wrote a handwritten poem to Jeffrey Epstein, because that sounds like Donald Trump, and drew a naked lady around it, and it was framed and sold at auction or whatever. Jeffrey Epstein had it above his bed or something creepy like that. And that was such an unbelievable and stupid and ridiculous story that not even Charlemagne the God, spokesperson for Black Democrats of America. Is that a thing? BDOA? Maybe it's Black American Democrats. Bad. I think that's what it is. Charlemagne the God is the spokesperson for Black American Democrats, or bad. And hold on. I'm sorry. Hold that thought. I believe that the press conference is about to open. It's about to start. When we get back, I will share with you what Charlemagne the God, spokesperson for bad Black American Democrats, had to say about Jeff. Wait, do we have? You know what? Maybe we have time. Let me play it real quick. Here it is.
It's just funny how the news works. Because Bill Clinton, wrote a letter to, Jeffrey Epstein as well for his birthday, but nobody's talking about that. And Jeffrey Epstein had a picture of Bill Clinton in a dress and high heels, in his New York mansion, but nobody's talking about that. My thing is this. I don't care who's on the list. Everybody got to go. Burn it all down. Like, that's just simple as that.
Yeah, he's just like, look, everybody was on the list. Burn it all down. Everybody was on the list. Where'd Caroline? Hold on, that's Chuck Schumer again. Everybody was on. Bill Clinton. They remember the dress painting. Bill Clinton in the blue dress, a painting hanging in Jeffrey Epstein's apartment. That seems a little more salacious and damaging than one of these weird emails. But even Charlemagne the God is not buying the Democrat story. And this email thing, this email scandal, smells to me a lot like that birthday message. Like it's simply just a way for the Democrats to try to get people to stop talking about how much they failed in the government shutdown.
We are going to get to my remarks in Q&A as always,
Caroline
but I do
Leavitt.
have the FBI director with me here, Kash Patel. You all know him well, and he's here to provide an update for you all with respect to China. As you know, President Trump had a very successful meeting on his trip to Asia with President Xi, where they discussed the need for China to crack down on fentanyl production and distribution, which ultimately makes its way here to the United States of America. And the FBI director recently traveled to China following President Trump's meeting to meet with his counterpart in Beijing. And he has a really positive announcement for the American people to share.
All right, here we go.
The president wanted me to bring the FBI director out to share that with all of you today. So Kash
Patel with some positivity for a Wednesday. What's up,
As
Kash?
Caroline mentioned,
nice
we have
tie.
some tremendous news thanks to President Donald J. Trump
Let's
once
hear
again for the American people. As soon as the President of the United States took office, he issued a mandate to rid America of the scourge that is fentanyl, a drug that has killed hundreds of thousands of Americans.
Yes.
Thanks to his leadership and direct engagements with China, we set up a framework to execute that mission 8 months ago. Attorney General Bondi immediately thereafter took steps to engage her counterpart in China at the Ministry of Public Security. Pursuant to their direct discussions, as the FBI director designated to run counterpoint on this, along with the Secretary of State Rubio and Ambassador Perdue and the team here at the White House, we set forward a path to implement the policy needed to crush the plague of fentanyl. Deputy Attorney General Blanche and our teams have been hard at work ever since, ultimately culminating in my trip to Beijing last week. This was only possible due to President Trump's historic engagement with President Xi just a few short weeks ago that set the stage for today's announcement. At that meeting, the leaders reached an agreement. But just to put this in frame for the American people, a reminder here that nearly 100,000 people died of fentanyl overdoses just last year alone. Here, this year, under this president, the FBI has seized 1,900 kilograms of fentanyl so far. That is a 31% increase from the same time period last year. To put it in perspective, that's enough fentanyl to kill 127 million Americans.
That's a lot of fentanyl.
Fentanyl precursors are what makes up fentanyl. While we, the interagency, the Department of Justice, have been fighting hard to seize and stop drug traffickers, we must attack fentanyl precursors, the ingredients necessary to make this lethal drug. That was the sole purpose of my trip to China, to eliminate these precursors. And if successful, we would suffocate the drug trafficking organization's ability to manufacture fentanyl in places like Mexico. This was the first time an FBI director has been to China in over a decade and received the audience with his counterpart to address this matter directly. And again, thanks to President Trump's direct engagement with President Xi, the government of China committed fully to my engagement there on the ground in Beijing at a level never seen before. While at Ministry of Public Security headquarters, I met with my counterpart at MPS, where the Chinese government agreed on a plan to stop fentanyl precursors. What does that mean? The People's Republic of China has fully designated and listed all 13 precursors utilized to make fentanyl. Furthermore, they have agreed to control 7 chemical subsidiaries that are also utilized to produce this lethal drug.
Pretty solid.
Effective immediately, essentially, President Trump has shut off the pipeline that creates fentanyl that kills tens of thousands of Americans. These substances are now banned, and they will no longer be utilized by the Mexican drug trafficking organizations or any other DTOs around the world to make this drug. This historic achievement has saved tens of thousands of lives. This historic achievement would not have been possible without the tremendous team of President Trump, the Attorney General, the Department of Justice, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and Ambassador Perdue in China, whose ground-level engagements were imperative to achieving this result. This is yet another example of how President Trump defends the American people, provides security for the American people, and puts the American people first. This is a historic first-in-its-kind achievement by any president to stop the scourge of fentanyl, and it should be championed by every single American. This achievement will save lives. We are thankful for President Trump's steadfast leadership, and this FBI will fearlessly follow in his footsteps to ensure that this mission of safeguarding the American public is achieved every single day. Thank you.
Very good. Nice announcement. Bravo. Good fentanyl announcement from Kash Patel, FBI director.
Thank you again, Director Patel.
Who
Before
just
we
got
get
back from
going, I do
China.
have one quick scheduling announcement.
All right, here we go.
Tomorrow, President Trump will be joined by the First Lady in the East Room for an executive order signing aimed at expanding opportunities for education, career development, housing, and other resources for young people transitioning from foster care to adulthood.
Good.
This is part of the First Lady's Fostering the Future efforts, which are a Be Best initiative. In other news, the Democrats dragged on the government shutdown for 43 days, the longest shutdown in U.S. history.
Amen.
But tonight, thanks to Republicans, the White House is very hopeful that this shutdown is going to come to an end. The damage caused by the Democrats with this reckless government shutdown cannot be forgotten. It is entirely the fault of the Democrat Party. Just look at the vote count. Hundreds of thousands of federal employees have missed their paychecks. Tens of billions in wages and benefits were withheld, impacting vulnerable families. Millions of low-income Americans missed their SNAP benefits. Nearly 20,000 flights at airports across the country were delayed due to staffing shortages, causing Americans to miss family events, vacations, and work obligations. According to Airlines for America, an estimated 5.2 million travelers have had their flights disrupted over the course of the Democrat shutdown.
They don't care.
And our economy has lost billions and billions of dollars in economic activity over the course of this shutdown, hurting consumer sentiment and crushing the travel and hospitality industry.
They don't care.
According to a CBO estimate, the Democrat shutdown could end up decreasing fourth quarter economic growth by 2 whole percentage points.
Yikes.
The Democrat shutdown made it extraordinarily difficult for economic economists, investors, and policymakers at the Federal Reserve to receive critical government data. The Democrats may have permanently damaged the federal statistical system with October CPI and jobs reports likely never being released. And all of that economic data released will be permanently impaired, leaving our policymakers at the Fed flying blind at a critical period. It's hard to recap all of this without asking a simple question: why? Why have the Democrats put the American people through this pain for 43 days in a row? And it feels like Groundhog Day being up here again talking about this Democrat shutdown.
It'll be over today,
hopefully. The answer to that
hopefully.
question is pure partisan politics.
Partisan politics.
They started this shutdown with a ridiculous demand to force taxpayer-funded health care benefits to illegal aliens who broke into our country. Even after it was clear President Trump and Republicans would never force American taxpayers to pay for free health care for illegals. In fact, President Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill fixed that problem. The Democrats kept dragging this reckless government shutdown on for weeks longer to boost their turnout in an election, perhaps one might guess.
Partisan
That's
politics.
because the Democrats are totally captured by their far left-wing base who only care about attacking President Trump, even if it means hurting innocent Americans in our country. The Democrats' weakness and their unwillingness to buck the fringe members of their party dragged this harmful shutdown on for 7 weeks and inflicted massive pain onto the American public.
Buck those
but let's
members.
be clear. The clean CR being voted on today in the House of Representatives that will lead to the reopening of the federal government is what President Trump and Republicans have supported from day one. Our troops, air traffic controllers, and federal employees will be back to receiving their regular paychecks. Families in need will get back to receiving their food purchasing assistance, and the people's government will soon be back open for business.
Great.
President Trump looks forward to finally ending this devastating Democrat shutdown with his signature, and we hope that signing will take place later tonight.
Yes.
On another matter, I want to address the affordability issue that's received a great deal of media attention this past week, which is ironic because it didn't receive that much attention when Joe Biden was here and inflation was at a record high 9%, the worst inflation crisis in modern American history.
Get it, girl.
And President Trump won a landslide election in part to address the affordability issues created by Joe Biden and the Democrats.
By the way, we're
and
twinning
that's exactly
today, Caroline
what
and I.
President Trump has done
Burgundy.
since day one of his administration. Since the first day in office and every day since, the Trump administration has taken aggressive action to fix the Biden-created cost of living issues. The notion that the same Democrats who just shut down the federal government to sabotage our economy, rob people of their paychecks, and also helped Joe Biden ratchet up inflation to 9% are now suddenly affordability champions, that notion is completely absurd. And it's something only the liberal media would have the gall to push. But the reality is that President Trump and his administration have done so much to lower prices and increase the economic prosperity of the American people. And this president and his team of amazing economic advisors are going to keep working on this issue every single day.
Oh, remind me,
In
I have
less than
Scott
10 short
Bessent
months,
newsletter,
President
which
Trump
is
signed
incredible.
The largest middle-class tax cuts in American history.
He stuck it to
including no tax on
MSNBC.
tips, overtime, and Social Security, which will guarantee that next year Americans are going to put more money back into their pockets. The president has completely unleashed American energy dominance to help bring gasoline prices to the lowest in 5 years, and we expect them to continue to decrease. And it has also lowered energy costs overall. There is more work to do, but again, the president's deregulatory and pro-American energy agenda is absolutely going to continue to drive down prices. This formula worked in the president's first term, and we expect that it's going to work again. And this is key because we know energy costs are the #1 driver of inflation. Again, just look at what Joe Biden did to our energy industry over the past 4 years of his administration, and look at what happened to inflation as a result. Everything became more expensive. To lower prescription drug prices and healthcare costs, the president has been working around the clock on this issue. He is obsessed with negotiating these good deals on behalf of the American people to bring down pharmaceutical costs and drug costs for Americans, and he has done so on a number of fronts. You have seen him discuss that in the Oval Office several times. To fuel small businesses, lower their costs, and incentivize hiring, the Trump administration has already cut 30 unnecessary regulations for every new one on the books, which we know will save employers and small businesses across the country thousands of dollars in regulatory burdens.
That's great.
All of these pro-Trump policies are working, and they will continue to work. Wages are rising at the fastest pace of the start of a presidential administration in 60 years. The cost of the typical new mortgage is down by nearly $3,000 per year. There's much work to do, and this administration will continue to do it. But President Trump has already made great progress in cleaning up the economic disaster that was created by Joe Biden.
Remind me,
With
by
that,
the
I will
way,
take your
I have
questions
Scott
today. And in our
Bessent
new
news
media
about...
seat, we have Bev Turner, who works for a new outlet, a UK outlet, but based here in Washington, D.C., GB News. Bev, thank you for being here today.
GB News.
Kick us off.
I bet she has an accent.
So the clock is ticking on the Friday deadline by which the BBC must retract and apologise for their malicious edit of the president in the documentary show last year. The recently resigned Director General of the BBC yesterday described the organisation as the very best of society and blamed the enemies of the BBC for this outcome. Also yesterday, a senior government minister launched a fierce defence of the channel in the House of Commons, saying that the broadcaster remains a light on the hill for people
What's the
all
question?
over the world. So, does the president feel that the network is taking the situation seriously? Does he believe that they've shown sufficient regret? Does this strain the relationship between the president and the prime minister? And given that the organisation is
like 9 questions.
Is the president prepared to bankrupt the BBC in his pursuit of truth and justice?
Well, thank you, Bev. There's a lot of questions in one there. I will say, I know the president has a very good relationship with Prime Minister Starmer. You have been there, you've seen them in their interactions, you've questioned both leaders in your time joining us when we've gone to the United Kingdom a few different times now. However, he has always been very frank when he disagrees with leaders, even whom he has a good relationship with. And the BBC, being a fair news organization, is definitely an outlet. I think these two leaders would disagree. The president has made it very clear that this is a leftist propaganda machine that is unfortunately subsidized by British taxpayers, and he thinks that's extremely unfortunate for the great people of the United Kingdom and Great Britain. And I think that the president was deeply concerned by the editing, the purposeful and dishonest editing of his speech that was so clearly fake news, and he rightfully dubbed that term many years ago, and this is a classic example of that. We see it in the United States all the time. We see it now in the United Kingdom. As you know, the president's external legal counsel has filed a lawsuit against the BBC. We expect that to continue, and whether they apologize or not is up to them.
I say bankrupt the BBC. They never treated me well either, I'm going to be honest with you.
I have your statement about the new Epstein emails that have been
released
by House Democrats.
First question out of the
Separate
gate.
from why you believe the emails were made public, can you address their substance? Did the president ever spend
There's
hours
zero
at
substance to
Jeffrey
these
Epstein's
emails.
house with a victim?
These emails prove absolutely nothing other than the fact that President Trump did nothing wrong.
Yeah.
And what President Trump has always said is that he was from Palm Beach, and so was Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein was a member at Mar-a-Lago until President Trump kicked him out because Jeffrey Epstein was a pedophile and he was a creep. And this email you refer to with the name of a victim that was unredacted now and has since been reported on in this room, so I will go ahead and say it, Virginia Guffrey. And it was CBS's own reporting, Ouija, that recently wrote that Miss Guffrey maintained, and God rest her soul, that she maintained that there was nothing inappropriate she ever witnessed, that President Trump was always extremely professional and friendly to her. And so I think it's a question worth asking the Democrat Party, and you should all go ask them after this briefing, of why they chose to redact that name of a victim who has already publicly made statements about her relationship with Jeffrey Epstein and is unfortunately no longer with us. Mary.
Thank you, Galen. 2 questions on this. In the interest of transparency, why not just go ahead, release the full files on Epstein, get this all over with?
This administration has done more with respect to transparency when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein than any administration ever. In fact, this administration, the Department of Justice, has turned over tens of thousands of documents to the American people, We are cooperating and showing support for the House Oversight Committee. That's part of the reason you are seeing these documents that were released today, because of the House Oversight Committee's and Republicans' efforts to get these out to the public. This administration also moved, the Department of Justice also moved to unseal grand jury testimony, which we know, unfortunately, a judge declined those requests. So this administration has done more than any, and it just shows how this is truly a manufactured hoax by the Democrat Party. For now, they're talking about it all of a sudden because President Trump is in the Oval Office. But when Joe Biden was sitting in there, the Democrats never brought this up. This wasn't an issue that they cared about because they actually don't care about the victims in these cases. They care about trying to score political points against President Trump, as we have, of course, seen with this government shutdown. And this entire thing, again, it's not a coincidence to the American people at home. There are no coincidences in Washington, D.C. And it is not a coincidence that the Democrats leaked these emails to the fake news this morning ahead of Republicans reopening the government. This is another distraction campaign by the Democrat and the liberal media, and it's why I'm being asked questions about Epstein instead of the government reopening because of Republicans and President Trump.
I do concur that is the way more important topic of the day today,
meeting with
which
Representative Boebert in an effort to try and get her to not sign this petition calling for the release of the files.
Doesn't it show transparency that members of the Trump administration are willing to brief members of Congress whenever they please? Doesn't that show our level of transparency? Doesn't that show the level of transparency when we are willing to sit down with members of Congress and address their concerns? That is that's a defining factor of transparency, having discussions with members of Congress about various issues. And I'm not going to detail conversations that took place in the Situation Room in the press briefing room.
Yeah,
Reagan.
duh.
I have a question about the government shutdown.
Thank
Oh,
you.
good. Thank God.
I'm glad
Government
someone
shutdown
does.
question.
First, on the government shutdown, the shutdown deal reverses the administration's reps, and it also prohibits war from happening until the end of January. I'm wondering if the president had input on this.
She's talking about the reversal of the firings and the cuts that Donald Trump has done since January.
I mean, look, I think it's about 6,000 workers total. When you look at that in comparison to the reduction in the federal workforce that this administration has done since January to get rid of the waste, the fraud, the abuse, and to reduce the size of our federal bureaucracy, we've done a lot of great work on that front, and we will continue to. But obviously, the president's main priority was to reopen the federal government and get people back to work, and that's what this deal accomplishes.
By the way, that vote is supposed to happen sometime this evening, I think, probably when everybody gets back into town, which
military base on the Gaza border.
she's talking about the military base in Gaza.
So I had a conversation directly with the reporter who wrote this article, and this article was based on a single piece of paper, an inquiry that somebody in the Department of Navy made about an idea that may happen in the future. And this reporter deemed that as an official plan and ran with a story that the United States is looking into it. I checked with the highest levels of the United States federal government. This is not something the United States is interested in being engaged in. It's not something we are currently involved in right now that we will be funding. And the president has been very clear he doesn't want to see boots on the ground with respect to what's happening in the Middle East. We've made great peace. We've made great progress with the peace plan in Gaza, and we want to continue to see that move forward. But I put a comment in that story for a reason, and sometimes we see reporters take a piece of paper like this and just deem it as official policy, and sometimes that misleads people a little bit. Sure.
Yep. So the vote, by the way, is supposed to be tonight when all of Congress returns. But with the flight delays caused by the shutdown, it's causing some some congressmen and women to be delayed in returning to open back up the government. Wouldn't you figure?
This military operation.
Wouldn't you figure?
There's been a lot of discussion about the high caliber of the intelligence that has been provided before any of these military actions have taken place.
Question about military
I've
actions.
Seen
I'm not
that report.
Oh, yikes.
Hello.
At least
I've seen that report. I'm familiar with the reporting, but we don't comment on intelligence matters, classified intelligence matters, as you know. As for the Trump administration's position on our narco-terrorist campaign in the Caribbean, it is going to continue, and the president has made it very clear he's not going to allow terrorists to bring illegal drugs that kill American citizens into our great country. Sure, John. I'll go to John and then Zolan. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. Trump has talked about sending out $2,000 checks to U.S. citizens.
Do it.
Earlier this year, he also talked about sending a Doge dividend. That didn't materialize. Should U.S. Citizens expect a $2,000 proposal? Is the White House committed to making that happen?
The White House is committed to making that happen, yes, and we are currently exploring all legal options to get that done. I don't have a timeline for you or any further details, but I can confirm for you that the president made it clear he wants to make it happen, and so his team of economic advisors are looking into it, and when we have an update, we'll provide one.
It's for middle and low-income families. I'm not sure what constitutes middle or low-income.
Shutdown was that people missed.
But I'm not expecting one.
Can you explain then why the administration went to court to fight the funding of food stamps and SNAP benefits?
So recipients missed their SNAP benefits because the Democrats shut the government down. And they forced the administration to tap into a contingency fund that did not even fund the full entirety of this program.
Correct.
And so then you had an unhinged judge who was trying to dictate from the bench what the executive branch has to pay for and where that money has to come from. That is judicial overreach at its finest, and so that's why the administration pushed back on that. We can't have the judicial branch telling the executive branch that we need to rob the Children Nutrition Fund, which is what this judge was trying to do, to pay for SNAP benefits. That's completely inappropriate and it's unconstitutional, and we've been proven right with that legal argument. But now the good news is, again, thanks to Republicans and in several hours, President Trump, the government is going to be reopened, and SNAP recipients are going to receive their full benefits, which is what President Trump has always wanted to do. Stephen.
Yeah, this is a lie that the media keeps telling you, that the president didn't want to fund SNAP. The Republicans voted 15 times to fund SNAP.
Responsibility to tap into any of those
and they did not. The Democrats voted no SNAP.
We did. We did tap into it. We did tap into the contingency fund. And then the judge told us, no, you have to get more money from a children's nutrition fund. And we felt that was judicial overreach. You shouldn't tell the president which fund he has to rob because the Democrats are holding the country hostage by shutting down the federal government. Stephen, go ahead.
Well, if the president is considering a pardon for Ghislaine Maxwell?
Again, he's answered this repeatedly. It's not something he's talking about or even thinking about at this moment.
How many times are we going to get the same question over and over?
I've got two questions about New York for you.
Sure.
First,
you always do. On brand for the New York Post.
Mayor-elect Mamdani, he said that he plans to reach out to President Trump and that, quote, this is a relationship that will be critical. Does the White House have a response to this planned outreach?
It's the first time I'm hearing of it. I'll let the president respond himself to that comment by Mr. Mamdani.
My second question, Jack Schlossberg, the grandson of President Kennedy, announced today that he's running for Congress. He, in the recent past, has referred to his uncle, the HHS secretary, as, quote, a rabid dog, and he has said that the Trump administration is, quote, the most corrupt in American history. Does the White House have a comment on this sort of comment from a rising star in the Democratic Party?
Nope.
I don't even think such ridiculous comments are worth responding to.
Yeah.
Obviously, those things are not true. And Secretary Kennedy is doing a phenomenal job bringing transparency and the gold standard of science back to our healthcare system.
Remind me also, I have some HHS news with J.D. Vance and RFK Jr. that is phenomenal. Some great clips about them putting the smackdown on the new MAHA initiatives.
Wall Street's going to be tonight.
I don't have a full list for you in front of me, Eamon. I know you've reported on some names, and we've helped you navigate whether those names were truthful or false. But I know the president actually plans to bring some of you into the dinner tonight, so you'll see for yourself in several hours if that's okay with you.
And there's been some reporting that the White House is frustrated with Bill Pulte and the rollout of this proposal for a 50-year mortgage. Can you tell us if the White House is frustrated with that rollout and if the White House still supports the idea of a 50-year mortgage for Americans?
This is a proposal that the president himself has commented on. I would defer you to the president's statements, and it's something that the administration is discussing and seriously looking into. Sure.
Thanks, Nellie.
Danny, and then go ahead.
Thank you. Some Democratic members of Congress have invited Britain's former Prince Andrew to testify on the Epstein scandal. I was just wondering if President Trump thinks that former Prince Andrew should indeed come and testify to Congress on that.
I haven't spoken to him about that specific matter, but I can ask him and get back to you. Mm-hmm.
On the government shutdown, the president and House Republicans have made clear they were not going to negotiate health care strategy or policy while the government was shut down. Now, assuming that it reopens tonight, is the president intending to invite any Democrats over to have negotiations over these subsidies or any other plan to bring down the cost of health insurance?
I will just add that, as you pointed out, the Democrats were holding our country hostage to try to negotiate on a healthcare system that they created. Obamacare, as it's famously called, is a system the Democrats created. It is a broken system. It has driven up healthcare costs dramatically in this country. And now they shut the government down to try to fix that system they broke. It doesn't make any sense to us, which is why the president said that's a completely untenable position. However, once the government reopens, the president, as he's always maintained, is absolutely open to having conversations about healthcare. And I think you'll see the president putting forth some really good policy proposals the Democrats should take very seriously to fix, again, the system that they broke. You can't trust the same people who broke the system to fix it, and so the American people will continue to hear from the president on this issue.
Follow up on the question about the $1,000 payments of tariff revenue. The president had also talked about using tariffs to bring down the national debt. Would this be in lieu of that? Like, this is now the new way to maybe to use that tariff revenue?
No, the president put out a statement on this clarifying he wants to do both things with the tariff revenue that he's bringing into this country. Trillions of dollars are expected to continue to pour in, and it's part of the reason that the Supreme Court case is so vital for our country's future, to restore our manufacturing industry in this country, to protect our national security, to continue to allow the president to use tariffs as leverage to negotiate economic deals that, again, are good for our national security. And that revenue can then be used for various reasons, to pay down our debt and also perhaps to give these rebate checks back to Americans, which, again, the White House is exploring the legal options of how we can get that done.
I mean, there's so much tariff and investment revenue that you could send a $2,000 check to every middle income and low income American and still have substantial amounts of money to pay down the deficit, which I think is his plan.
I'm happy to check with the National Security Council and get back to you.
You recently said you'd check with President Trump about why he needed to get an MRI on his recent trip to Walter Reed. Do you have any more detail on that?
I do, and I'm glad you asked. As stated in the memo provided on October 10th, President Trump received advanced imaging at Walter Reed Medical Center as part of his routine physical examination. The full results were reviewed by attending radiologists and consultants, and all agreed that President Trump remains in exceptional physical health, which I know all of you will see with your own eyes later this evening when he opens up his dinner to the press, and perhaps you will see him when he signs the bill to reopen the federal government. So stay tuned on plans for that. Thank you, everyone.
Oh, look at that. There we go. And she's Audi 5. Oh, there was no question from Peter Doocy. I saw him sitting there in the front row, but I guess Peter Doocy didn't get a question today. That's very interesting. I guess she had to bolt every now and then. You got stuff to do. But there, look at that. A bunch of questions about Epstein, which we should not at all be surprised by, because the Democrats still have their operatives in the mainstream media, and their job is to distract from the failures of the Democrat Party. Their job is to push the line of the day, the talking point du jour. And the talking point du jour is Jeffrey Epstein stuff. Donald Trump, no actual proof of anything, but Jeffrey Epstein stuff. The New York Times reporting Epstein alleged in emails that Trump knew of his conduct. In a message obtained by Congress, the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein wrote that Donald J. Trump spent hours at his house with one of Mr. Epstein's victims. House Democrats on Wednesday released emails in which Jeffrey Epstein wrote that President Trump had spent hours at my house with one of Mr. Epstein's victims, among other messages that suggested that the convicted sex offender believed Mr. Trump knew more about his abuse than he has acknowledged. Believed, but had no proof of. Mr. Trump has emphatically denied any involvement. By the way, it should be President Trump. But they like to do that. They like to call, which is why I'm glad that Caroline Leavitt referred to Mamdani as Mr. Mamdani and not Mayor-elect Mamdani, because for years, the Democrats have been disrespecting President Donald Trump by calling him Mr. Trump. All the major news agencies, instead of calling him President Donald Trump, called him Mr. Trump. Why? Because they were sore losers. They were mad that he won and that they didn't. And that's just kind of one of the petty things. I mean, they do a lot of petty things, but that's just one of the petty things that they do repeatedly. Anyway, these emails, like we've already gone over, are just the latest in an ongoing scandal that the Democrats try to bring up every single time there is a loss on their side, or every single time they're down in the doldrums. And they're down in the doldrums because their leadership is in turmoil. Chuck Schumer, and a lot of people don't realize this, Chuck Schumer isn't just the minority leader in the Senate. He is currently, I mean, you want to talk about a party that's down on their luck. Chuck Schumer is currently the highest ranking Democrat in the federal government. He's the highest ranking Democrat in the federal government. All the other people above, you got Donald Trump, Republican, J.D. Vance, Republican, Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, who's in the presidential line of succession, is a Republican. Senate Pro Temp is a Republican. Senate Majority Leader is a Republican. And then you get to Chuck Schumer, the Senate Minority Leader, who is the basically pointless and powerless, but also when your top ranking official in government is pointless and powerless, your entire party is basically screwed. I mean, you're devastated. There's really very little else that you can do when Chuck Schumer is the highest ranking member of your party. And the second highest ranking member of your party is Hakeem Jeffries. And so that's the real problem. You've got two real dolts. And I, for one, man, I don't know about you, but I'm going to miss the sombrero memes. That was something else I said. You know what? That brings me back to me earlier today on Newsmax. I mentioned how much I was going to miss the sombrero memes of Hakeem Jeffries and that other guy.
Mark, how does this play out for Chuck Schumer?
Well, number one, I'm going to really miss the sombrero memes now that the shutdown is over. But with Chuck Schumer, look, the man shut down the government, or he gave his bidding to the Democrats to shut down the government because he was trying to protect his political future, which is weird because even if he ran again in 2028 and won, he'd be 83 at the end of his next term. But Chuck Schumer, in trying to save his political career, has totally destroyed it. And he shows that he truly wasn't able to wrangle his caucus. When you have 8 senators cross the aisle, despite the fact that you've told them not to, or that you've begrudgingly asked them not to, you don't have the power that a lot of these far left progressives want you to have. And so, yeah, it looks like he'll definitely be out as senator. Will he be out as minority leader before that? I mean, unless something else comes along that's shiny and annoying and angers Democrats, right now their eyes are all set on getting rid of Chuck Schumer. Maybe the ballroom construction will save him. Maybe they'll get back on that track. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. They're going to go back. They're going to start reporting on the East Wing being ripped down again for Donald Trump's big ballroom. But Chuck Schumer has lost control of his caucus, which you can't really blame him. He's 74 years old. Not many 74-year-old men still have total control of their caucus. Thank you. It just comes with age. It just happens. It's a thing that happens to all men. Look, I know it's going to happen to me when I'll lose total control of my caucus. Which is totally inappropriate and also really, 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 really fun to say. I was talking about something somewhat important. What was it? So Chuck Schumer's the leader of the party. But look what's happening. He's not going to be the leader of the party for long because in 2028, there's going to be an election. And in order for Chuck Schumer to retain his position as Senate Minority Leader, he's going to have to win his re-election to the Senate. And right now, it ain't looking good because AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who is a representative in the House of Representatives and the de facto leader of the Democrat Party, has a massive lead on Chuck Schumer in the favorability department.
Net favorable among New York Democrats. Look at this difference. Look at this difference. The net favorable rating for Ocasio-Cortez among New York Democrats, plus 46 points. Compare that to Chuck Schumer, who's only at plus 16 points. She is running 30 points ahead of Chuck Schumer, the Democratic leader in the United States Senate, among her and his constituents here in the state of New York. My goodness gracious, what we are talking about is if Ocasio-Cortez decides, you know what, I don't want to run for president, I want to challenge Chuck Schumer in a 2028 Democratic primary for United States Senate, these numbers suggest that that primary challenge could be very, very real. And a lot of the numbers I'm seeing right now suggest she would actually be a favorite at this point if she, in fact, decides to take on Chuck Schumer. Again, this is a guy who was first elected to the United States Senate back in 1998, and now she's got a real chance to knock him off. What we're talking about is new days are here, especially for the very liberal part of the Democratic Party. It is their time to shine, at least if we're looking at the data.
30 points is a huge
yes.
lead.
All right, I want you to think about this for just a minute. I'm gonna leave this here for just a minute. 46 points. This is favorable. This isn't who would you vote for. This isn't who do you want to be your senator. This isn't which of these two Karens is less annoying. This is favorability, and favorability actually plays a big factor in who people vote for. They vote for people they like or that they think they like because they don't actually know who they are who their true selves are. But Ocasio-Cortez, plus 46 points. That's plus 46 points. And that's 30 points more than Chuck Schumer. That's more than double almost what Chuck Schumer has, which is plus 16, which means people in New York, they don't like Chuck so much. They prefer Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Now, it's no surprise that New Yorkers prefer a young, attractive bartender. Attractive? Well, according to what's his name? Andrew Clavin. She's attractive. But they prefer a young bartender from the Bronx over an old, wrinkled dude from, I don't know, wherever Chuck Schumer's from, New York. That's all I know. That's all I know about him. So it looks like if the election were held tomorrow or next year or in 2028, Chuck Schumer would be out and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez would be in. She may even, probably not because she'd be a freshman senator, but she may even down the road become the Senate majority leader or minority leader, depending on whether or not the Senate's and the Democrats are in control of the Senate. But I want you to think about this, because in 2028, which is a long way away, right? We've got the midterm election coming up in 2026. Then we've got 2 years after that in 2028, the Senate election in New York, where Chuck Schumer will either be reelected or replaced. That primary is going to be a bruising primary. And we've also got a presidential election where J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio, we believe, are the front runners on the ticket, unless something crazy happens between now and then. But Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has also been long rumored to be either a presidential nominee or pick or a vice presidential pick. I've heard both. I've heard that she's going to be with Zoran Mamdani on the ticket, and it's going to be Cortez Mamdani in 2028. I've heard that. That's been something that's been coming across my desk. I've heard that it'll be Gavin Newsom and AOC, and they'll just run away with LA and New York. The flyover ticket, the blue state express. Gavin Newsom Cortez would be on that ticket, and that would be the other way to go because Gavin Newsom is already openly campaigning for that position in 2028. Now, she's going to have a choice to make. She really right now has her pick of any job she wants in the Democrat Party. She could be the senator from New York. She could be the vice presidential candidate. She could probably be the presidential candidate too. It's all up to her. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who fewer than 10 years ago was a bartender, who lied about the cops coming to her bathroom when she was scared for her life in her office building on January 6th, who lied about traveling to the border to look at the little children locked in the cages by big, bad, evil President Donald Trump. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she is the most popular Democrat in the world right now. She runs the party, which maybe explains why the party's not doing so well. I want to play. What do I want to play next? Do I want to play the J.D. Vance? There were a couple things about J.D. This is, you know what? I'm just gonna have to go to X because I didn't get a chance to pull all the clips. But this is something that's been popping off this morning, and it's about J.D. Vance and RFK Jr. And they were at I think it was the Maha Summit, which is Make America Healthy Again. Let me go back to the beginning here. Yeah, here we go. This is J.D. Vance at the Maha Summit. Listen to him carefully. They're talking about making America healthy again, but they talk about all kinds of different scenarios. Here we go. Listen carefully. This is the first clip.
There is no way that this country is going to advance unless we're comfortable with people who are willing to challenge orthodoxy. And that's what I think got so broken, not just about the scientific bureaucracy, but probably it was worse in the scientific area than in most other places, is we've got to be comfortable challenging some of these old orthodoxies. And part of that is welcoming people who are a little unusual, because unless you do that, like, you're not going to solve America's problems with McKinsey consultants who say everything the right way all the time. No offense for the McKinsey consultants, because but many of whom are very brilliant people, but like you need the consultant mindset. You also need the person who is just thinking about an idea because it's interesting and it's fascinating and it's not being focused on enough in the right way.
By the way, a McKinsey consultant, McKinsey's a huge consultancy, and it's like a big think tank, and they basically just hire a bunch of smart people to think about stuff. But when you hire the same consultancy and with the same people to think about the same problems in the same way, it kind of gets repetitive and redundant. And what you need is you need new thinkers. You need new people. You need new folks who are going to come up with new ideas. Very similar to, President Donald Trump, who has new ideas all the time. Like, hey, instead of just letting people in the country for free, why don't we charge them $5 million? That's a good way. That's a good way to raise some money. There's another clip here where they talked about the most favored nation status and lowering prescription drug costs.
Obviously, if you go back to like the MFN stuff, meaning most favored nation drug pricing, that really has happened because the president and Bobby and a number of members of the team have been actually working with private industry to lower the cost of prescription drugs for American citizens. Now, it would be great if we could get congressional Democrats to actually do something meaningful with us. Because you would think, you think of Democrats, they like to say that they're for the working people against the big pharma companies. So you would think that legislatively they would want to work with us, but it's actually been hard to get them to work with us. So we've had to sort of go outside of the system and work with private industry to do some of this stuff. And I think you guys have done an incredible job with that. But if you look at a lot of our most important health initiatives, they have come through partnership with private industry in some form or another. And I also think that there's a mindset shift where you mentioned some of the people like Marty, like Jay, who have been such a critical part of what you've been doing. The thing that I love about the team that Bobby has put together is, yes, a lot of them have a sort of private sector mindset. They just want to get things done. They don't care about the bureaucracy or they don't care about all the people saying no in government, because as Bobby and I have learned, there are a lot of people saying, no, you're not allowed to do that, or no, you shouldn't do that. And we just have to punch through that in order to achieve results for the American people. But I also just love that Bobby has put together a team of people who are not terrified to think about things in new and interesting ways.
All right. So, and let's get back to the same point. So what he's talking about here, and this is really interesting because this is one of the reasons why President Donald Trump is so effective, is because he has this entrepreneurial mindset and this entrepreneurial spirit. And what he's doing and what he's done across every single industry, whether it's the pharmaceutical industry, whether it's the auto industry, whether it's farming, whatever it is, he goes to the big players and he teams up with them. He partners with them. AI, for example, NVIDIA, all of these companies. He doesn't just say, we're going to regulate your industry so that you're forced to do this. He knows that you could, yes, as government, as we saw with Joe Biden and the Democrats, they constantly reached out to social media companies. And what did they do? They threatened them. They said, you need to censor this person. You need to delete this person. You need to cut this person out. You need to demonetize this person. We don't like these comments, these tweets, these accounts. You got to get them. You got to get rid of them. And Mark Zuckerberg and, what's his name from Twitter, they supposedly said, but we can't do that, free speech, whatever. And then the government said, well, then we're going to shut you all down. We're going to bring in all these issues and you're going to be sued for all of the content that you're posting that's copyright protected and yada, yada. And it just became a big mess. So their hands were tied. They were forced by the government. They were regulated by the government to do what the government wanted. Donald Trump said, we could do that, but you know what we're going to do? We're going to work with these companies. We're going to make it beneficial. We're going to make it worth their while so that they'll want to do this. And that is an entrepreneurial spirit. And we're not going to worry about any red tape. We're going to cut it all out. If they say, yes, sir, we would love to do that, or yes, sir, we could do that, but the government gets in the way, Donald Trump's going to get the government out of the way. And that's one of the reasons he's gotten so much investment in the United States of America. Investment through, money for AI, investment in factories and manufacturing and pharmaceuticals. It's because he got rid of the red tape. It no longer takes forever and a day to try and build a factory in Louisiana or Nevada or California or wherever. The regulations are gone. And that's all part of the opening up of the American economy to foreign investment so that we can make trillions of dollars. Here's a good one.
You want to talk about like populism, and you want to talk about people being pissed off. Well, yeah, people are pissed off when they don't have good jobs. And people are pissed off when things disappear and move overseas. And people are pissed off when they feel like, other countries are being prioritized over the United States of America. And all of that is part of the populist resentment of the past 20 or 30 years in American politics. You know what really pisses people off? When they realize that their loved ones are dying much sooner than everybody else. And that is a big part of the story of what's going on in Appalachia and why I think so many people in Appalachia feel left behind. I mean, my story, obviously, it's been, like you said, I'm like the golden boy. Things have just worked out for me in this really incredible way. I feel so lucky and so grateful for it. But I also feel a certain sense of guilt because there are a lot of people who grew up in families like mine who haven't had an easy life and who haven't had all this economic opportunity and who haven't had, a person that they've fallen in love with and they've been able to sort of build a stable, nice family like me and Usha have been able to build. And that gives me a sense of purpose because I want those people to have the same opportunities that I've had. But it also gives me a great sense of anger because we never should have gotten to the point that we are today. And the reason that we have is because of failed leadership, and it's failed leadership over generations. And by the way, you talk about Appalachia, you were talking about people who, though they don't have much, would take the shirt off their back and give it to a complete stranger because that's what you do. If you go back to America's biggest wars, World War I, World War II, Vietnam, which are the counties that filled their draft quotas with volunteers instead of with draftees? It's very often the parts in deep Appalachia where you've got grinding poverty, but you've also got this incredible love of country. So if any place in this country deserves not to be left behind, it's Appalachia. But on the public health stuff in particular, the numbers don't look good. And it's one of the reasons why I'm such a big supporter of what you're doing, because these are people who deserve to live better, healthier lives, but they really have been left behind by this country's leadership.
All right, that was a little longer clip, but that was a good one. And he's saying, look,
you were talking about populism.
It's really interesting to me, and that was the one part that really struck me is when he talks about populism. Where does populism come from? Well, populism and, America Firstism, or nationalism, as some people call it, it comes from this sense of being left behind. We were all told, be proud to be an American, love this country, fight for your country, honor your country. But then what happens when your country or the people leading your country do the opposite? What happens when the opportunity you're supposed to get, the life, the liberty, the pursuit of happiness is no longer available to you because it's being given by the leaders of your country to other people who aren't America first, who are America last, or who are just coming here to take advantage of a system that was built by people who believe America is a bad and evil place. That's where populism comes from. Populism comes from people who love this country being represented by or stepped on by people who don't. And so when you look at Donald Trump, when you look at the popularity of Donald Trump, when you look at the popularity of J.D. Vance, when you look at all of these states we talked about earlier, these swing states voting for Donald Trump, Pennsylvania and Nevada and Wisconsin and Michigan and all these others, Georgia, when you look at these swing states going for President Donald Trump, it's because the people there looked at the leaders in charge and said, these people aren't like us. They don't appreciate us. They don't take care of us. They're taking care of themselves and they're taking care of foreigners. And we're Americans. We're the ones that they're put in charge to represent. Why aren't they representing us? That's not populism. That's just common sense. Again, something that's lacking in the Democrat Party. Real quick, I promised you Scott Bessent cooking MSNBC. MSNBC, man, they never quit with the propaganda. They never, ever stop with the propaganda. They had Scott Bessent on, and they were asking about Argentina and a cash swap that we did with Argentina, and how they factored it or they are describing it as a bailout. Well, Scott Bessent wasn't going to let him get away with mischaracterizing exactly what happened. And he made MSNBC, not like it's really much of a stretch, look more foolish than they usually do.
How does a $20 billion bailout of Argentina help Americans? You're the president's point person on that. Can you explain to those here who are feeling the pinch, including America's farmers, why the United States is helping out Argentina?
Well, do you know what a swap line is?
It's currency swap, yes.
Yes, but what is that?
You're the Treasury Secretary.
Yes, but why would you call it a bailout?
That is how...
In most bailouts, you don't make money. The U.S. government made money. We used our financial balance sheet to stabilize the government. One of our great allies in Latin America, during an election, the president there won in a landslide. The government's going to make money, and I would rather use peace through economic strength than have to be shooting at narco boats coming offshore if the government collapsed. We have a generational opportunity in Latin America to create allies. We just saw an election in Bolivia. We're probably going to see an election in Colombia. We've seen them in Ecuador. We're going to see them in Chile. So by stabilizing the economy there and making a profit, then that's a very good deal for the American people. And there's a lot we could have been doing for American farmers, but Democrats closed the government.
Boom. Roasted. We could have done all this great stuff for American farmers, but guess what the Democrats did? They shut down the government. And when you shut down the government, there's very little that the government can do for farmers. When you shut down the government, there's very little the government can do for anyone. Which, my favorite part of that is, do you know what you're talking about? You're the Treasury Secretary, right? But you're the one calling it a bailout when clearly it's not. Here's why. A, B, C, D, E, F, U. I'd like to cite the following reasons. A, B, C, D, E, F, and U. Listen, you want to talk about bailing yourself out. The government is never a stable investment, and nobody knows this better than President Donald Trump. That's why he's trying to weaken the federal government and get it less involved in your life. Something that is a great investment, something that is stable is gold. Gold has never been more stable. Augusta Precious Metals has proven that. Augusta Precious Metals is a fantastic place to get more information about investing in gold, because gold, ever since President Donald Trump has become president, gets more and more valuable. And everybody, those Bitcoin bros that you see on Instagram, they own gold. All of these rich real estate investors, they own gold. Everybody, whether they promote it or not, it may not be the sexiest thing, although I think gold's pretty awesome. But it's not the investment du jour. It's the long-standing, stable investment that is a much more safe haven for your money and your financial future than anything else. So here's what you should do. If you have $50,000 in an IRA or a 401k or a savings account or an investment account, go to getmarksgold.com and get your free gold guide from Augusta Precious Metals on how to invest in a gold and precious metals based IRA. Getmarksgold.com is where you go to get that information about the Augusta Precious Metals and the gold and precious metals based IRA, which could get you a 25% return. I mean, if you invested in it last year, that's what you'd be staring at. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying it's too late. I'm saying the next best time to invest is right now. I'll go to getmarksgold.com. Thank you so much for subscribing to this channel. Thanks so much for subscribing to the podcast and listening to the show. I really appreciate it. Make sure that you're subscribed if you ain't already. Make sure you're telling whatever podcast platform you're listening to that you love this podcast, that you want it all the freaking time, and also share it with a friend. Look, if you hang out with people who are like-minded, then they're going to love you for sharing this podcast with them. And if you hang out with people who are not like-minded, they're going to hate you even more for sharing this podcast with them. And what's better than making a liberal more aggravated than they already are? Really, I say nothing. So that's another great reason to share this with everybody. In the meantime, keep coming back for more so we can keep you informed and entertained and educated and enlightened and inspired to every single day fight. Anywhere, anytime, any place, so that we can all save the